Good evening, fellow members of this society. It's a pleasure to be here at this debate. I'd just like to offer some remarks by way of clarification. There is a difference between allowing someone freedom of speech and offering them a platform for said speech, as the president of a much inferior debate society to our own pointed out on Facebook today. For example, I think any strange man should be allowed to claim that magic water that you bash in a horsehair saddle or what have you can cure diseases. I certainly don't think you should make him the head of state. Therefore, what I must show tonight is that having a popular opinion is enough to merit a particular form of special treatment. Before I get onto that, however, I wish to introduce our most honoured guests. Opening for the opposition, we have Mr. Daniel Bregman, Chair of the Debate Selection Committee. Now, I could massage Mr. Bregman's ego by pointing out that last year he was voted as Merton's most attractive male. I'm not going to do that because it has come to my attention that he also really likes rewriting debating standing orders. Just a bit of advice to you, Daniel. Given the events of the last week, don't do that too much, or Ronnie Collinson, ex-standing, ex-CCC, ex-RO will probably be coming after you as well. Our next guest is Mr. Steve Hart, who is the chair of Unite Against Fascism. As well as being chair of UAF, Mr. Hart is also chair of a progressive think tank class and the previous political director of Unite the Union. Given his highly commendable record of campaigning for left-wing organisations, it's probably a good thing that ALCA doesn't operate a no-platform policy, or I'd be in pretty deep trouble right now. Finally, please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Aaron Porter, who was the president of the NUS from 2010 to 2011. Some of you may remember that I was involved in the campaign to disaffiliate from the NUS last year. At the time of his presidency, the government introduced higher tuition fees, so, Mr. Porter, I know what it's like for a vote to not go your way. Except if 1,000 extra votes had turned up on your side, I think it would have been even dodgier than when it happened to me. Those are your speakers, Mr. President, and they are most welcome. This evening, I will be looking at what it means to give someone a platform and why popularity of a belief is enough to give it this privilege. There are three main points I want to consider. First, that if you want a decent criteria of what we should platform, the popularity is one of a few that can work. 2, that no platforming does not work against popular views. And 3, that no platforming simply reinforces the legitimisation of violence in a political system. So, first and foremost, what sort of platform should we be considering? One thing that I do want to avoid arguing against is the notion of a safe space. There is no onus on Oxford's largest feminist Facebook page, you all know the one I'm referring to give airtime to outrageous misogynists, for example. These and other sorts of forum are spaces which have a duty of care to their members, which outweighs the rights of people to say things which are reasonably likely to cause offence. I firmly believe that those who wish to discuss very contentious and potentially triggering topics should keep and be kept well away from those who could be distressed by the words, but I also firmly believe that those topics do have merit in themselves and they do need to be discussed somewhere. That is not what safe spaces are for, and nor they should be, but it is the purpose of places like the Oxford Union. It's the ethos behind our founding. When I say platform, I therefore mean a platform at places such as the Union. So, I want to offer a positive criterion for popularity as a justification of a platform. For us to offer you a platform, it has to be at least reasonably worthy of consideration. I don't believe that such an objective standard to judge this has been found. Insofar as we think fellow people are reasonable, then a view which is commonly held in our society does at least seem like it has passed a subjective view of what reasonableness is. And it seems to track a lot of intuitions on the matter. The Union would never, I hope, hold a debate on the ethics of universal suffrage. Yet this idea would not seem particularly offensive or controversial to us had it occurred at the turn of the 20th century. I'd be deeply opposed to inviting a proponent of apartheid to the Union because there is no reasonable debate about apartheid. All reasonable people agree that it was a horrible racist evil and there's no place to debate it because there's no reasonable argument that can be made in its favour. I'm staunchly in favour of ending the war on drugs, and in maybe 50 to 100 years, I hope there is no reasonable justification for hosting a debate and doing so. However, I disagree with the notion that it is at this time a subject which cannot be debated. For one, the ethical concerns surrounding the war on drugs are ones which have the potential to create a vast difference of opinion between people who we would presently regard as reasonable. 2, by pretending that there is no debate left to happen, we lull ourselves into a false state of security. Whilst the United States is making very slow progress on this issue, we still have a ridiculously arcane system of drug classification in this country. The argument has by no means been yet won. The second point is one of pragmatism. The recurring theme of many forms of bigotry is that a particular group holds undue influence in society. And what is the easiest way to convince people that this idea is the case? It is, of course, to stop them from discussing it in public. Attempting to silence a belief which has taken hold in large sections of the public will inevitably backfire. Rather, we must drag its proponents into the public arena and show their ideas to be disgraceful. Just look at the spectacular implosion of the British National Party. Back in 2010, they were a lot larger than they are now, perhaps on a scale almost comparable to the Front National in France. And they even had representation in the European Parliament. Shortly after this, former party leader Nick Griffin was controversially invited to speak in Question Time. What was the result of that? Well, members of this House, I am incredibly proud to live in a country which has wiped out the BNP to all but 2 council seats of the United Kingdom, and I hope those last 2 seats shall follow very shortly. Margaret Thatcher may have complained of terrorists being given the oxygen publicity, but surely as a chemist, she should have realised that oxygen in sufficient quantities is poisonous. My last point is my most important one, I believe, and it is vital to draw a distinction here. When fascists are marching down your street, attempting to incite violence, you have an absolute unqualified right to self-defence. Yet when there is no such immediate threat, and someone is stating in a public forum, such as this one, something you find immensely disagreeable, yet is unlikely to directly incite violence, I simply cannot see how one can attempt to silence such a bigot without legitimising the view that it is okay to silence people who express opinions that you disagree with by force. What is happening today is that, rather than radical opinion being on the receiving end of censorship, it is often those who hold radical opinions who want to attempt to silence people who certainly don't appear to be condemned by the public at large. In both cases, it is seen as a legitimate tactic to use sheer force of numbers to set the parameters of debate, even intimidation. I worry that the tactics used against people who disagree with the current political climate in Oxford are ones that can be used with devastating effect by the people who now define it. We cannot afford to be in a situation when we are setting the pattern, an example for the social authoritarians to follow should the political situation in this country, or indeed the city, change. Wrong one. To platform a view is not to legitimise it. Only the responses to a view can do that. It is my firm view that platforming obnoxious beliefs actually helps to delegitimise them, insofar as the sheer repulsiveness of a view becomes obvious when shown in the public arena. I remain convinced that bigotry can never be based on facts, and that's why I am proud to propose the motion.